Hello everyone, and welcome to E3 Day 2. It's going to be a long, exciting day because today is going to be pretty much all meetings. To give you an idea of how many there are, it starts with my first meeting at 10:45 a.m. and I have back-to-back meetings until 5 p.m. Yeah, but this is going to be awesome. These meetings include games like Battlezone, Wild Guns Reloaded, Worms W.M.D, Nioh, Attack on Titan, and an interesting VR game called Floor Plan. And after going to the media hospitality room and fixing some audio issues, it's time, I think, to start the day. The first meeting of the day was Battlezone, which was great fun. It's a reboot of the classic 80s arcade game under the same name. Using the new VR technology, they were able to create what Battlezone was always meant to be, a surreal, first-person tank shooting game. But it's not some just generic tank shooting game. The developers have added in some cool nods to the original arcade classic, which you can hear about in my interview with Steve Bristow, who's the lead designer of the new Battlezone. Feel free to check it out by clicking the I button or the link in the description. While I played through the demo, I got a sense of how the game would work. Basically, you complete various missions with various goals on a hexagonal map that's different every single time you play it. Missions range from destroying all the enemies to protecting a base, and there's a ton more variety planned for release alongside the PlayStation VR. It's funny though, while this game was really fun and felt pretty real, one thing kept this demo from being the best VR experience I've had. I got a bit of motion sickness. I mean, just a bit, but this is the first time I've ever felt that way in VR. It's just having to move the left stick for moving the tank, the right stick for moving the reticle, and add in all that head movement. It's just a lot of motion going on at once. Now, not everyone is going to feel sick, and it's probably something I just need to get used to, but it just really caught me off guard. Since Battlezone finished a bit early, I chose to head over to the Xbox booth to try out a new indie game that I was very excited to play, Cuphead, a run-and-gun game whose art style is heavily influenced by 1930s cartoons. In fact, according to my interview with animator Joseph Coleman, which you can watch by also hitting the I button or the link in the description, all visuals are made exactly the same way as it was in the 30s, with handmade cell animation and watercolor backgrounds. And their hard work is paying off. It's absolutely beautiful. Before the interview though, I wanted to try to get a sense of how the game plays. And when I went to stand in line for Cuphead, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I also didn't bother watching the person in front of me play, which definitely was a mistake because when he handed me the controller, I didn't quite understand what he meant by good luck. Soon, I realized exactly what he meant after I died again and again. Luckily, my second player, Mugman, was much better than I was, so I still managed to see most of the level, and it was incredibly well made. It seems that every single time you want to jump somewhere, there's always just so happens to be an enemy right there waiting for you. But you can't even get mad because you can tell how much work the team put into this game, and it shows. This game is a love letter to old cartoons and challenging video games, and I'm definitely going to pick it up when it releases, hopefully, this year. By the time the interview ended, it was time to head over to the Natsume booth to try out Wild Guns Reloaded, a fun arcade-style game expanding on the original Wild Guns for the Super Nintendo released in 1994. The cool thing is that the original team who made Wild Guns are the ones working on Reloaded. Apparently, during the development of the first game, the team wanted to include many more features into this SNES classic. However, due to time constraints, as always, they couldn't include all of them. This was one of the main reasons that Wild Guns Reloaded is being created, to include features meant for the original. Reloaded includes all of the original stages from the SNES plus some, as well as the two original characters, Clint and Annie, and two new characters, Bullet and Doris. They've also added in some new weapons, like the laser. The focus for the team while making this game was to make it as close to the original as possible, and they've done a great job. It's definitely not an easy game, and it does take a bit to get used to, but once you've got the moves down, it can get really addicting. But just remember, because this is an arcade-style game, as the term arcade implies, there is no saving. So once it's game over, it's literally over. Just like the good old days. The way levels are structured in this game, the first 2 levels start with a shooting gallery and end with a mini boss after the timer runs out, and at stage 3, we got to the main boss and barely made it out alive. However, we did beat it together and won the demo. It really just shows how great of a local multiplayer this game really is. It reminded me of the days I spent with my brother playing TMNT Turtles in Time, and I'd love to play this game with him when it comes out, and totally crush it. You hear that, brother? Victory will be mine this time. Next on the docket was Worms W.M.D. coming to Xbox One, PS4, and PC. But on the way to the meeting, I saw a couple people I knew, Steve Males and Grant Kirkhope. Remember my video on the development of Banjo-Tooie and how a couple members from Playtonic helped out with it? Well, Steve actually remembered me from that, which was pretty awesome. But we only had time for a quick photo, and then I went off to Worms. Worms W.M.D. is like, well, Worms. But it does have some great additions and fixes to it. First off, some nice fixes they made were switching the jump and fire button and having items like the parachute used automatically when equipped, so there's no need to press another button to use the parachute in the air. Thank goodness, because I could never use the parachute well. Worms W.M.D. doesn't just fix past issues though, it actually builds upon the already great gameplay. One of my favorite additions they added was interiors. In previous Worms games, they had castle battles, and I always thought, man, this would be so much better if you couldn't see inside the other player's castle. Well, now, the time has come. Another addition they made was sniper turrets and machine gun turrets. These weapons are generated on the map and work pretty much as expected. You walk up to it, you get in, you fire. Something entirely new to the Worms series though are vehicles, and W.M.D. has quite a few. There are helicopters, tanks, as well as some unannounced ones that are apparently going to be very exciting. The one I got to try in the demo was the tank. You can move around, obviously, with the left stick, and like a normal tank, you can jump as well. Pressing the fire button shoots out 6 shells, 2 at a time, one after the other, and pressing the button again will stop the barrage if you need to. Of everything I tried in the demo, my favorite was crafting. Basically, in a level, you can collect materials and use them to craft different weapons. For those of you who have played a Worms game in the past, you may remember being able to purchase weapons with gold. Well, this is kind of the same thing, but more complex. When you get the required materials for a weapon, you can choose to craft it or one of its variants, assuming you have the extra materials for the variant. As an example, a shotgun has these choices: a regular shotgun with 2 shots like normal, a triple barrel shotgun with 3 smaller shots, and a training shotgun with a laser sight. The cool thing is crafting doesn't end your turn, so you can still do any attack you want, and the crafted weapon will then be available next turn. I just love crafting. It really does add something new to the game that I haven't seen in Worms games previously. Plus, with all these variations, you can create some really unique weapons, like a holy hand grenade mine, a concrete donkey that shoots fire, and an orbital strike that does this.
Now the X button.
Oh, dang.
So everything in that window, including the terrain, is obliterated.
Overall, I love Worms W.M.D. The art style is great, and they've added a whole lot of new stuff that definitely makes it worth picking up. At least for me. I mean, I love Worms in general, though. In fact, I played so many Worms games over the years that I beat the demo in half the time it was supposed to take. Oh well. Since I beat the demo so fast, I had time to try out a couple of other games that I really wanted to try. One of these was Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Spirit of Justice. Now, I've played many an Ace Attorney game in the past, and I've enjoyed them all. This, though, was a very interesting take on the series. You're basically traveling in a foreign country as, of course, Phoenix Wright, when all of a sudden your guide for the trip was arrested for murder. And as typical, you come to his aid as his defense attorney. However, in this country, defense attorneys are looked down upon. In fact, your guide doesn't even want you to help him. The priestess is who the court looks to for guidance, and her seances are the deciding factor. Your goal, in addition to normal cross-examinations, is to find contradictions in her seances and help free your guide from suspicion. I really enjoyed the seance gameplay. Each part of the seance has the senses that the victim experienced right before their death. Your goal is to find contradictions in the senses using evidence in the court records. It's a bit more challenging than a normal cross-examination, and I really enjoyed that change. Other than that though, not much to say. It's just another Ace Attorney game. So if you like Ace Attorney, you'll like this. If you don't, you probably won't. The interesting thing about this demo is that it was so long. In fact, there was no way I would have had time to finish it. With around 30 minutes left till my meeting with Koei Tecmo, I decided to play with Trico from The Last Guardian. The wall here is entirely interactive, with it following your location and reacting to props, like this thing that scares him. So cute. Of all the meetings I went to, Koei Tecmo was my favorite. I had 2 games to play while I was there, both of which I was really incredibly excited to see: Nioh and Attack on Titan. First up, Nioh. I had played the alpha demo before when it was available to download, and the game has definitely improved since then. I couldn't really pinpoint any specific improvement while I was playing the game, but it just felt better, if you get what I mean. For those of you who don't know what Nioh is, it's a very challenging game that pits you against both humans and creatures alike in an action role-playing game. But even when you die, and you will die a lot, you still have that sense of progression, because you get to keep the items that you previously collected. It's a beautiful looking game with very complex gameplay. I feel like there was a lot more customizing I could do, but I just didn't have the time to figure it all out. It was a 30-minute demo and I played 1 stage for the duration of it. In that time, I only made it to the second part of the stage. I don't know if I was just really bad at the game or if the game is just really that difficult, but I had fun either way. But those 30 minutes went by in a flash, and I headed over to the next demo station for Attack on Titan. For those of you who haven't seen the show that it's based on, these large humanoid creatures have destroyed almost all of humanity, and the last remaining survivors are only protected by the walls around their city. But something has gone terribly wrong, because one of the Titans has managed to destroy the wall, and as a member of the military, you must fight back for humanity using a device that allows you to soar through the air, and special swords that will cut the only weak spot on the Titan, the nape of their neck. Now, I have personally watched the show before, and even though I don't watch a lot of anime at all, I really did enjoy the show. That's why I was incredibly excited to try out this game. I wanted to see if they managed to capture the intense nature of the show, and they did. The plot of the game follows the show to the letter, and thankfully for those of you who are like me, they used Japanese voice acting for the whole game. Starting with the tutorial, I realized just how awesome Attack on Titan's gameplay is. The controls were tight and the right mixture of not being too easy and not too hard. It was just the right amount of complexity that allowed you to feel like you had to practice and learn the controls. It's not a pick up and play game at all. On the PS4, you press the square button to fire an anchor, X to boost, and R1 near a Titan to enable combat mode. In this mode, you select which body part you want to target with the right stick and press the square button to fire an anchor into that part. Lastly, you move around with the left stick until you find an opening, then let go of the stick to charge towards the enemy. When you get near the body part, you press triangle to attack, and if you boost before attacking, the damage will be increased a lot, which may be necessary for bigger enemies. In this game, your main mode of transportation is flying through the air, and it feels great. I related to the feeling of playing those old Spider-Man games as a kid, save for the fact that in this game you can only fly into areas with objects that are close to you, so you can't fly around it in an open field. After finishing the tutorial, I had a good grasp of the controls and was ready to play a real stage. The battlefield in these stages are really large, and the gameplay has a Dynasty Warrior-esque feel to it. Throughout the stage, you have different missions to accomplish, and for this one, I had to first help some citizens escape, and then help reclaim the Trost District's base. In the stage, there are also allied parties that will sometimes send out distress signals as side missions that you can answer. If you don't answer them, they'll have to pull out, and sometimes if you don't save someone, they will be eaten. I successfully won the campaign mission, however still 5 or 6 of my fellow soldiers died in battle. I didn't like that, and if I had had more time, I would have replayed the mission hoping to save them. I mean, this is a very intense game, but unlike Hyrule Warriors, which is based off of Dynasty Warriors, you don't feel overpowered. In fact, I felt weak to be honest. It takes time to kill a larger Titan, and things can always go wrong. Your cables can be interrupted by objects, you can run out of gas or blades, or worse, both, and you have to find an ally to replenish them if you do. And of course, you could always get grabbed by a Titan, in which case you have to mash a button to get out. However, after you're grabbed, even if you get out, you'll be injured until someone heals you. And while you're injured, you can't move around very fast at all, and you're at risk of being picked up again, which did happen to me once. The game is just a whole lot of fun, and I am definitely pre-ordering it. The last meeting I had was an indie game for VR called Floor Plan. It's an interesting little puzzle game where you have to seemingly clothe a dummy on the top floor by visiting other floors which are all connected in some way. Each floor has its own interesting characters, each with their own unique personality. You can move between these floors freely and store up to 3 items in the elevator as you move between them. It's a goofy little game that's a bit of a challenge too. You have to look into each floor closely to find clues on what to do next, and something you do on one floor may affect the one below it. It doesn't seem like it's a long game, but it's definitely fun while you play it. And plus, this game is out now, so feel free to check it out. After finishing all of my meetings for the day, pretty much all the lines were closed. So instead of playing another game, I just decided to walk around and take in the sights. Though I did get a pair of glasses from Retrobit for playing an oversized NES controller. So yeah, fantastic day overall. For tomorrow, the last day, I plan on taking the day and just playing the rest of the games on my list. So here's to hoping I can find the time to play them all, and hopefully the lines won't be that long. See you then.